So next on the list of television video and video attribution methods, we're going to talk about the Google Causal Impact model and to a lesser extent Facebook Profit. These are both flavors of a Bayesian time series cross-sectional model, although for all intents and purposes, Google Causal Impact is the one that works best, or at least that's been my experience with regard to television, mostly as it relates to the output that it's giving us. So let's go into the weeds of what it does and how it works and where the limitations are. So I took this straight from the Google Causal Impact website. It's the output, or one of the outputs that you get from building the model. And I'm going to assume for the purposes of this discussion that whoever's watching is going to include a lot of non-technical folks. So I'm not going to get deep into the weeds of the statistics and the math. For that, you can go and do your homework and do some research on Bayesian methods and what's going on under the covers. I'll explain to you how it's working though. So just like any cross-sectional time series approach, we have our test group, we have the control group. When we're talking about TV, we're generally talking about DMAs as the unit of observation. So we're going to put DMAs, one set of DMAs into the test, one into the control. If we're doing a multinational campaign, we could very easily use country-level controls, particularly if we're doing television in Europe. There's some good comps there. And what we're going to do is we eventually want to expose the test group to television, but not the control group. And we're going to use the control group to help us say something about what would have happened in the test group had television not run. So think of it like this. The x-axis, let's just say that this is time. And we're going to measure what revenue we're getting from the test group and the control group over time. And so maybe it looks something like this. And on the control side, if it's a good control, it should look roughly the same. And then at some point in time, we're going to turn TV on. And then we want to see, well, what happens in the test group based on what and how does it compare to what we would have expected to happen in the test group relative to what we know of the control. And the hope is something like this happens. TV goes up and the control group stays the same here. Using this control group, we make a prediction of what would have happened in the test group without TV. This here, there's a technical phrase for the term for this. This is called a counterfactual. And all it is based on the control data, what do we predict would have happened in the test group had television or whatever the treatment that we applied on this date not run. And the whole reason why we have this control group, because some folks say, like, why do we look at the control over time? So what we're doing is we're actually calibrating a model, building a model to make predictions on the test group based on the control group during this pre-television or pre-stimulus period. And it helps to prevent a situation like this. What happens if the control group were to do something like this? So because we built the test data, or we trained a model to make predictions on the test data based on the control, its counterfactual is going to account for that dip that we saw in the control, because we'd expect that same dip to happen in the test side since the control is being used to predict the test. That allows us to get a more accurate measure of what the true impact is of the stimulus. This plot here that I took from the Google Causal Impact page shows exactly what we're seeing here. So here we see the breakout between the counterfactual and what actually happened. So this is the actual. This is the counterfactual, what we predicted would have happened. That blue area around it, these are confidence bands around that prediction. So it's pretty neat. And what we're looking for is we want that black solid line, the actual, to be outside of those confidence bands for us to be certain that something significant has happened here as a result of our stimulus. What this is showing here is just the difference between the actual and the counterfactual. So we see that it's zeroed out before TV. That's exactly what we want to see here. We want to see that the prediction, the counterfactual, matches the actual. And then after we started TV, all it's doing is it's taking the difference between that actual and the counterfactual, and that difference, that delta, is being plotted here. And then this is just a cumulative. It's just adding up and accumulating all of the values so that you could just look at this point here at the end and say, here's how much incremental value I got from television. All right, so when this first came out, we were all very excited because it had television in the white paper itself. So of course, my teams were like, oh, let's get right into this. And I think we were like one of the first users of this technology when it came out, as oftentimes my teams are. And what we found is that it does work well. It actually works better than most other time series cross-sectional approaches that we used. The problem, though, is with any cross-sectional time series model is that it has a very short expiration date. So in practice, what you'll see is, say, what happens if we never actually turn television on at this point? What happens if we just picked a date here where we stopped building the model? We said, all right, we're no longer going to use the control to fit onto the test, but we're going to just start making predictions of what's going to happen, pretending like we started TV even though we didn't. And what you're going to see happens is something like this. And there's exceptions to this, I'm sure, but this is what I've always seen happen. So you're going to see the test is going to start doing something, just normal things, and the counterfactual initially is going to follow. But then what's going to happen is over time, you're going to see this divergence happen. And you'll see this. What's cool about causal impact is the confidence bands tend to do a pretty good job. What you're going to see here, and again, we're pretending that TV didn't actually run, or we're going to say, like, if we were to design this television wouldn't have run. What you're going to see happen is that that blue area is going to keep enlarging until it reaches the point where it's just not useful anymore. And because you can't see anything, you don't have enough statistical power to say anything. And so that's what ends up happening. And so the question then becomes, well, how long do we have, based on our measures before we ever go on TV, how long do we have before the model goes stale and the confidence bands just are too wide to say anything of use to the business? And so typically what I've seen, and it's going to be specific to the business and what you're doing, but typically we're talking 2 weeks. Sometimes we're talking about a month. Rare cases of 1.5 months. Smaller businesses actually would probably have a better luck. I have been lucky, or maybe cursed, to have worked with very large brands that are multinational, billions of dollars per year, and so for me, the expiration dates are pretty quick. But for smaller businesses, you may be able to actually go out for many months and get a halfway decent result. So that in there is the issue. The other problem that you're going to face with this is it's not a micro method, so it doesn't tell you anything about how individual users are responding or how they're behaving on your site once they've been exposed to TV, or how it interacts with other things. It's kind of just doing a lump sum. Here's the effect of television after it's interacted with everything else in your environment, but it doesn't tell you anything about what's really happening under the covers. So I actually do use this. I find it useful before at the very beginning of television campaigns. But in practice, it has a short expiration date, just as a consequence of it's really difficult to find DMAs or countries that are good comps of one another. That's what's driving up the error or the confidence bands as we continue on. But nevertheless, still useful to use.